Thank you for listening to this Podcast One production, now available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, PodcastOne.com, and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That guy over there, Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Hey, we have just wrapped up our second episode of the Holzer Files, and it's been exciting. I can honestly say I saw something I had never seen, probably one of the most disturbing spirits that I've ever seen. And it's gonna, this will probably be the episode that embarrasses me the most this season, Tim. My reaction, although very human, probably not the coolest that I'd ever wanted to be filmed, but it's natural. It's what happened to me. Just, I don't want to give much away, but just think of, Kool-Aid Man. That's all I've got to tell you. Kool-Aid Man.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hell of a moment, but exciting nonetheless. All right, we've got some exciting news to share. Tim, are you ready for this?
Ready.
Listen, 3 years ago, we're very open on the show about our lives and personal lives and our challenges and our triumphs, right? Mm-hmm. Well, 3 years ago, Tim, shortly after my mom had passed away, my cousin had reached out and said, hey, your mom was going to do this DNA test for me for ancestry so we could continue to explore our family roots and get more history. Would you be willing to do it now that your mom's gone? And I said, sure. So I spit in a cup and sent it off to have the DNA markers checked. And I got back a result I was not expecting, Tim.
Right.
I found out that I had an adult daughter that I didn't know about. We soon connected, and as a matter of fact, for those of you that don't know, it was pretty interesting. I mean, we talked by phone, we communicated through social media together, and I invited her to come up to the wedding for Winnie and I. And I said, it's going to be a small little affair, just our family at our home. And she said, well, who's presiding over it? And I said, well, nobody yet. I'm looking to hire somebody. And she said, well, let this be my gift to you. Let me preside over it. And she got ordained through the Universal Life Church. And so the first time I physically got to meet my daughter, boom, she comes in to be my minister and help facilitate my wedding. Pretty cool.
Yes, very cool.
Yeah. Pretty hard to top.
Yeah.
Or so I thought, Tim.
Okay.
Dun, dun, dun. So, lo and behold, here we are 3 years later. I'm filming the Holzer Files in New York, and there's a lull in shooting as we're moving from one location to another, and I open up my email, and there's an email there from a company called Snarky Tea. But the kind of regarding line, Tim, was really weird. Right? Okay. The subject line said Ancestry.com results. And I'm thinking, this is one of those kind of hacked emails where they're going to try to tell me, somebody's hacked my Ancestry.com. We need your credit card. We need to make sure everything's safe. Because you're getting an Ancestry email from Snarky T.
Yeah, that sounds weird.
Sounds very hinky till I open it up and realize, no, what I've got here, Tim, is an email from a young woman. A 32-year-old young woman. And automatically I started, and I don't want this to sound bad. I mean, I was so delighted to find Jen, but you just start thinking, oh my God, what kind of man am I? I've sired children I don't know. I'm pretty proud of the fact that I've kept in touch with most of the women I've ever dated. I should know these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I read the email, and she basically goes on to say that her father took a DNA test through Ancestry.com and connected us with a 100% certainty that this was my biological father. Dun, dun, dun. The plot thickens, my friend.
Yeah, it does.
Because my mom, it was the 60s. I've had this conversation before. It was the 60s. My mom was a free spirit hippie, and she thought that my father was this one gentleman. And when I reached out to him 30 years ago to try to, say, hey, and literally the letter I sent him was very short. It was like, hey, my mom told me you're my dad. I would really love the chance to meet you. I don't want a car. You don't have to take me to the ball game. I'm not looking for reparations for all the years you've been gone. Let's just have a beer and as adults shake hands and let me meet you once, get a picture with you, and you never have to see me again. Mm-hmm. And I got back horrible responses. This guy wrote me letters threatening my life, threatening me, everything. It was pretty horrific. Yeah. And then lo and behold, 16 years ago, I reached back out because I knew that he had another son, and I found that son, and we ended up connecting. And he basically took a stand by my side and became my brother, Lee, and we've been very close for 16 years. And that was it. I was just always of the mind I'll never meet my real father because my brother said he's just, he's not a very nice man. And once he's made a decision, he doesn't go back on it. And he decided he didn't want anything to do with me. What happened in the 60s, in his opinion, stayed in the 60s. So whatever, I had to learn to adjust with that. It's always been that kind of the missing puzzle piece, the missing answer to the riddle of my life, right? Knowing my father. So all of a sudden I get this letter that, no, in fact, your father is a gentleman by the name of Bill Clark. And my jaw hit the floor. And she's like, if you'd like to get in touch with us, that'd be great. If not, we understand. And I wrote back to her, I think my holy beep, yes, I want to contact you. Within moments, we were on the phone together, my sister and I. That's pretty remarkable to say, grown up an only child.
Yeah.
We chatted, had a great conversation. She said, yeah, I'd sent you a message over on Facebook. And I looked and I couldn't find a message. And I thought, oh, maybe she meant Twitter. So I switch over to Twitter, check my private messages. There's a message from a Shannon. And she's like, oh my God, you're my brother. And I'm like, what? And so my family tree sprouted a nice new trunk, Tim, and many branches. But then there was still my sisters found me. How does my father feel about this?
Right.
Well, he had actually okayed them to reach out to me and sent along some pictures, which is pretty startling because my father looks very much like my son Nathan and my daughter Ripley.
Huh.
Not spot on, but they definitely have a family resemblance, which is also weird. He has a very big family resemblance to who I believed was my half-brother Lee.
Really?
Right? Who is not my half-brother anymore, as it turns out to be blood-wise, but after I broke it to Lee, he said, dude, you're my brother. It doesn't matter, which warmed my heart as well. So I got to keep my brother in this mix. But the first time around trying to get in touch with my biological father, who I thought was a totally different man, was horrible. This man reached out to me. We ended up spending time chatting together on Facebook, and I ended up getting a chance to talk to him, and my world was blown, Tim. All this fascination in the supernatural and the paranormal, he goes on to tell me, is totally natural. He, in fact, reads tarot and tea leaves. His grandmother, which would be my great-grandmother, was a Scottish gypsy queen. And her name was Jenny, and she was very strong in the force, if you will, and very tapped into the paranormal. My sisters have had experiences. My father's had experiences. And what was funny is here we have this first conversation, and it turns all into the paranormal and spirituality. And my father knows more than I do about all of this stuff and was walking me through things. And it was really remarkable. So that kind of cryptic message I put up on Facebook the other day talking about my family tree growing, this is the story behind that. So Ancestry.com, it gets a double thumbs up for me. Turns out I've got multiple brothers and sisters. The nut does not far fall from the tree, Tim. My father with stepchildren and everything has 8 children like I do. I have 11 with my wife and her 3 children, of course, that I love dearly. But it was just holy cow. And we have a lot of similarities. My sisters are remarkable. I've had a chance to talk to 3 of them so far. My stepbrother, and it's been just great. I mean, it's such a warm and welcoming experience. But to know that the supernatural and the interest in the paranormal is just part of my heritage and bloodline. I thought it was just because my mom and aunt read scary books and they were cool with me reading them and always supported my questions. But little did I know it's truly a part of my bloodline.
That's completely awesome.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And my sisters have powered through episodes of the Holzer Files and listened to episodes of the show now. And I'm very proud of my little sister, Jenny Lynn. She 32-year-old Spitfire. She owns the company Snarky Teas, or Snarky Tea, rather. And folks, go support her, get her tea. It is phenomenal. She sent me some of the different teas because, getting up early, filming, doing everything I'm doing here. She sent me tea that would help with my stomach issues. She sent me tea to help me sleep. She sent me tea to help me wake up. And the names of her teas are great. You guys are going to love them. They're like Wake the F Up tea and so on. So she's got my personality and grasp of all of that. It's very exciting, but she is just a little Spitfire entrepreneur and actually appeared on Shark Tank. So 2 of our family members are TV people, Tim.
There you go.
She scored a deal with Mr. Wonderful himself and Bethany Frankel, I think she said. And they partnered up. Her company is doing great. But so you automatically now, folks, have to support my sister, Snarky Tea. Go order Snarky Tea. Go check out the website. You'll love it. And see the videos. She's great. Absolutely wonderful. And my amazing and sweet wonderful sister Shannon and I have bonded so well. My sister Kim, I've just started communicating with her. She's very fascinated by the supernatural and paranormal as well. So I'm just, it's overwhelming. It's exciting. And I wanted to just share that with our audience, that there's a whole new level of excitement in my life. And I'm pretty thrilled with it. And I just thought I'd share that with you guys. So there you have it. And as my paranormal experiences grow, I will let you know with my family. I'm flying down to. Here's the kicker, Tim. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
It's only fair. Karma exists, and here's my karma, Tim. After 8-9 years of dumb crime, stupid criminals.
Yep.
My father's a Florida man, Tim.
Oh, that figures, doesn't it?
He's not a criminal.
No.
As a matter of fact, he's ex-law enforcement. Mm-hmm. Again, that makes complete sense with my fascination with true crime. Mm-hmm. And my relatives that are all part of it, so it's been a part of it. His birthday, November 11th, mine November 22nd. Very cool stuff. Just these weird little synchronicities. Oh, how about this? His daughter, Jenny Lynn, has a daughter named Charlotte, who they call Charlie. I have a daughter named Jen. She has a daughter just born 3-4 months ago named Charlotte. They call her Charlie. That's a weird little coincidence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's just all these great little synchronicities, but I'm going there on February 29th. I'm going to be there for a few days so I get to meet my dad, meet my sisters, and he has been a delight and wonderful. My sisters have been great. My stepbrother, who I've had a chance to talk to. I can't wait to talk to everybody in my family.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. So we might have to have a Schrader edition of Darkness Radio, where I just have my family on to talk about all the weird stuff that's happened in their lives. What do you think? Is that too much?
No, I don't think that'd be too much at all. There is one other weird deal here with you that you're going to have to switch over.
What?
You no longer can be a Beatles guy. You got to be a Dave Clark guy.
Why do I have to be a Dave Clark guy?
Well, think about it.
Because the last name Clark?
Yeah. And first name Dave, last name Clark. You got to be a Dave Clark guy instead of a Beatles guy.
I'm sticking to the Beatles. I'm sticking with the Beatles. I'll let my dad be the Bill Clark. But what's really great to me is, I've been lucky in my life. I have a wonderful dad that I love very much, who raised me. My dad, Jim.
Oh, yeah.
He's raised me. He's been an integral part of my life. We love each other very much. He has been very supportive of this. When I contacted him and I said, hey, a guy that mom dated before she dated the guy she thought was my dad, turned out to be my dad. And my bio dad, and he laughed and he said, "Great, when are you going to meet him?" And has been so supportive and loving. I'm truly blessed to have two great dads in my life now. And when I told my bio dad, he's like, "Hey, I don't want to cause waves. This man raised you. He's your father. You know, if this is going to cause any problems," I'm like, "No, he's supportive and loving towards all of this and understands that this is a part of my journey and part of my story." And that shows you, you know, and my bio dad, Bill, said, you know, that, you know, anybody can be a sperm donor, right? Mm-hmm. But very few people are dads. And that's what Jim, my dad, is. Yeah. He stepped up, took care of me all these years, and has been a part of my life and support and love. And, you know, in the true nature of being a dad, he's never wavered and has supported me in every endeavor, writing, TV, radio, mail stripping, everything I've ever done, Tim. Wow. He's been there for me. And Bill, you know, is excited and supports that relationship and doesn't want to come in between that, but is, you know, wants to be a part of my life as well. So, at the ripe old age of 75, I've found my father. I get that, I get that chance to finally know my bio dad and my family. And going from an only child to suddenly having, Lee, my brother from another mother that I'll always love and cherish, but now opening up to a whole new part of my family. All these great half brothers and sisters and step brothers, and it's just exciting. So, you know, I've spoken to AJ, my step brother. I've spoken to Kim, my half sister, to Shannon, my half sister, to Jenny Lynn, my half sister. There's a few others. I don't want to throw out names yet till I've had a chance to speak to everybody. Our schedules are so conflicted, it's crazy. But there you go. That's my story in a nutshell, Tim. How about that?
That is an awesome story. That really is.
Even though my dad is now a Florida man, retired Florida man who's earned it, right? I think we could give him the pass for being a Florida man.
Sure.
He served our country in the Navy. He served our country as law enforcement and drug enforcement, and has been just a remarkable guy. So I think Florida is a safer place because he lives there now. How about that?
Tell me he's not in Pasco County.
I don't know where Pasco County is. My dad's in Sarasota.
Okay, he's not in Pasco County.
So we're safe. Yeah, okay, good.
He's good. He's
good.
Yeah.
But Tim, I remain in a safe zone. I remain in the haunted heartland of America. Well, part of the haunted heartland of America, Tim.
Okay.
And that brings us to our next guest, the real guest for today, Tim. Now that I'm past my story,
okay,
we've got to talk about a brand new TV series called Haunting in the Heartland, which premieres on Friday, February 21st at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific time on the Travel Channel. Apparently, I now have a new Travel Channel brother as well. Paranormal investigator, documentary filmmaker Steve Shippy visits Midwestern towns that have been traumatized for generations by ripples of fear. He grew up in rural Michigan in a creepy house on the corner, and now he's here with us on the creepy darkness on the edge of town. Steve Shippy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
And thanks for your patience. I told you I had a couple of announcements and had to share something personal, so I appreciate you hanging in and letting me get my story out there as well today.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story, man. I'm really happy to hear that you connected with all those people. That's got to feel pretty complete.
It is, and I'm excited to see where it takes me, but I'm also excited to see where your show takes us. I had a chance to watch the premiere episode, the screener for it. Fantastic. First of all, great show, and man, you've got it all, and I want to know something about you, and then talk about the show and where it's going. So let's start off with Steve Shippy. Steve, you grew up in the creepy house on the corner. Tell me a little bit about this. Where was that located?
Well, it was up in the rural town of Grayling, Michigan. It's a very small rural community, northern Michigan. Pretty cold, pretty similar to your terrain out there in Minnesota. And we had a lot of weird things happen in the house. I grew up in that house for basically the first 9 years of my life. And I used to have a lot of very strange experiences, try to talk to my family about it. And they were kind of in that stage where they didn't want to acknowledge it. So they kept telling me, oh, well, it must have been this. It could have been that. just your imagination, that type of thing. But as things progressed, naturally, it all kind of started to leak out. Everybody started to communicate with each other about what we were experiencing. And as a result, we finally left that house.
Really? It got that intense?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it got, the intensity was really more so the fact that there was no peace in the house. Everybody was on edge, afraid. You didn't know when it was going to happen again. And I had 2 other siblings, so I think they were pretty concerned about us at that point, because we were kind of making a pretty big deal about it, talking to people in the school, talking to the counselors, talking to everybody we could. And I think they kind of realized it was starting to have a pretty bad effect on us, and it was time to finally move.
Well, Steve, this house, at what point did you guys move into that?
Well, I was basically born into the home. So that was my first residence where I lived.
And your parents, of course, owned it then for a while. How long had they owned it before you came along?
Roughly a couple of years.
And were you the firstborn, or were you
the youngest? Okay,
you're the youngest. So yeah. Did they have quite a bit of experience before you even came along?
Well, that's the thing. They didn't have a whole lot of experiences. I mean, from what I gathered years later, when they were a lot more open to talk about it, it was smaller things, objects coming up missing, car keys missing, and then finding them in a random drawer. And one time even in the backyard, just out in the grass, just kind of strange things like that. But, nothing along the lines of the door slamming, scratches, all that stuff really started to progress over the years.
Did it seem to surround any time of year or any type of particular activity that would be taking place in the house when it would amp up more or less?
Yeah, looking back at it, I mean, I was definitely pretty young when all this happened, but it definitely seemed to me to be around 9 p.m. till around 4 a.m. is when it seemed to be the most active. And for some reason, I want to say it seemed worse in the fall and winter than it did in the summer, but perhaps that could be because we were home a lot more during those times, living in that type of area. In the winter, you don't really get out much. So maybe just being in the house more led to more experiences.
The type of experiences, I mean, were they always just kind of these weird little blips, these, your keys are here 1 minute, they're gone the next? I mean, were things amping up and getting more traumatic?
Definitely it did. The experiences that I recall that affected me the most was when you'd go to sleep at night, for some reason, this thing would shake the bed a lot. This happened quite a bit. And then you'd kind of wake up and try to determine, could it have been a dream or not? The light would turn on and off by itself. The closet door would open, slam shut, and a lot of knocking. So it just seemed to kind of pester you. It didn't want there to be any kind of rest in the house, is one thing that I noticed.
Now, the shaking of your bed, I mean, how violent was it, or was it just enough to stir you and then it would stop?
It's kind of a weird way to describe it, but it was almost like the bed would kind of vibrate, if you will. It didn't necessarily violently shake, but it would be enough to obviously wake you up. And then you're kind of, caught in between that half awake, half asleep type of moment where you're trying to determine, okay, did I just feel that? But then, of course, it would let you know very soon after with some kind of slamming sound or a door opening or even the bedroom light turning on. So it definitely wanted to it was trying to let you know, hey, I am doing this. I am here.
And what was like the kind of the final? Suddenly I've got a ghost train rushing past my hotel while I'm on the road here. But what was kind of the final straw that got to the point you guys were just like, we need out?
Scratches. That's, that was the big thing. Me and another sibling started to experience scratches, strange marks on our neck, on our arms, things like that. A lot of the times it would be waking up to it. So of course, they were trying to determine, could you have accidentally done this in your sleep? But then it started to happen while we were awake. And I think at that point, that's when my father finally said, okay, well, I don't believe in things like this, but I have no way to explain it. And I think he kind of, became a believer at the end there.
When you move out of the house, did your family tell anybody what was going on to the new buyers, or was your story already so well out there you didn't need to?
You know, it wasn't out there at all, actually. It was a very taboo subject for them. They didn't like talking about it. It took a few years for them to even finally acknowledge that it was happening. So they kind of came from that old school mentality. My father worked in corrections, and he was just that kind of guy where I don't think he wanted to admit that there was something that he couldn't handle or fight or protect us from. And I think it was also the fear that he had, that acknowledging it, I think, made it real to him. So they really tried to keep it quiet, was pretty much the mantra.
How much of this, and how old were you when you moved out, first of all?
I was about 9 years old when I finally moved out of there.
Okay. How much of it do you remember, and how much of it is just legend and lore that the family passed down to you?
Honestly, there was really pretty much no legend and lore from them. They just really did not want to talk about it. So a lot of stuff I had to pull out of them later, or talking to my brother and sister who were older, and they would tell me some things. But really what sticks in my mind is just my experiences, my personal experiences.
Did their experiences mirror yours, or were they living nightmares of their own?
Well, I feel like my sister may have got it a little bit worse than I did, talking to her years later. It really did affect her for quite a long time. She would have chronic nightmares about the house, as did I. In fact, it's not so bad anymore, but once in a while I'll still have dreams, or I guess you could call it nightmares, about that house. But she would say that it used to pull her hair, wake her up by pulling her hair, things like that. She would hear whispering in her ear. So it did seem to kind of target her maybe a little bit worse.
Did they ever see anything?
We did see a shadowy type of figure. It was pretty much always the same. Best way to describe it is it looked like an actual shadow of a person, but a little bit darker. And it was always on the wall, which to me was pretty interesting. You would never see it walking through a room, if you will. It was always casted onto a wall as if it were an actual shadow, but yet, the density wasn't the same as a shadow. And of course, there was no explanation for that shadow to be accounted for.
Did your family overall feel threatened by this presence, or it was just wearing you all down and you had to get out?
Definitely. I mean, I definitely would say that, that we did feel threatened by it, because, once it started to scratch and do things like that, it's kind of like, okay, well, what else can it do, or what else will it do?
Now I've got to ask, as an adult and a paranormal investigator and documentarian, have you ever gone back to that house to investigate and see if you can make sense of what happened to you as a child?
Actually, I never have. I did one time reach out to the people that owned it at the time. It's kind of changed hands on and off, and they were very adamant that they didn't want to talk about it in any regard or any capacity, and made it very clear that any trespassing, will not be welcome. So, and I thought it was a pretty strange reaction because the way that I approached them, very respectfully, didn't really say too much, just, told them I was a former resident, asked them if they've ever had any issues in the house. And they very much let me know, do not contact us again. No trespassing, etc. And that was the end of that.
Well, have you looked into, obviously they're not letting you back on property, but have you ever looked into the history of the land and your house to find out what might have happened and what you might have been dealing with? Yeah,
absolutely. We did. There was a tragedy that did take place some years before my family owned it. But, being a kid, there was no way that I could connect the dots at that time. So, of course, needless to say, there was no investigating going on. So I don't really know if that could have been contributing to it or not. There was also rumors later on that I heard from people in the community that supposedly one of the former residents played around a little bit in the black magic realm. But again, that really can't be confirmed. It's pretty much just rumor at this point.
Speculation, sure.
Right.
What can you tell us a little bit about what the tragedy was?
Well, apparently there was a homicide in the house, and a lot of really weird circumstances that seem to surround that. But again, in fact, it's funny that you bring this up because I'm really starting to do some fact checking on that now and have some people that are looking into it, and then also trying to reach out to the current owners to see if maybe, they'll be a little bit more in agreement with something of this nature. So we're kind of just saving everything to see if we can actually go in there and connect some dots.
Well, you start getting scratched. You start having experiences like this as a child. In the first episode, and I don't want to give anything away on this, but you come into contact with a little girl who seems to be having similar activity. Was that difficult for you, knowing that, this little girl was being harassed as well?
Actually, it really was. And not even just the fact that she was going through the same things that, me and my brother and sister did, but it's also kind of eerie, the similar hallmarks there with the family, talking to the entire family that lived in that home. And they would explain to me that this thing started to happen right when they moved in, and they all were having these isolated experiences, and they weren't talking about it. And that there were weeks, actually months, that had transpired where all of them were kind of living this fearful private hell in their own house, and they weren't communicating about it. And it took some time before finally somebody came forward and said, look, I think this house is haunted. This is what's happening. And that kind of reminded, that took me back to my childhood, where it's strange how all these people can live under the same roof and be experiencing the same thing, but yet you all feel isolated and afraid to talk about it, because it's almost like before, having the understanding about the paranormal that I do today, you feel that talking about it is going to make it worse or make it even more real. Does that make sense?
Oh, certainly. Certainly. It's like as soon as you acknowledge it, and we've worked on cases like that with the Holzer files, where it seems like you talk to the homeowners and they've got this smile and they're like, oh, no, everything's fine. But then everybody else you're talking to seems to have these horrifying experiences. And it starts to realize, it's like a realization that, oh, you're having them too. But if you say it out loud, you're no longer safe. There's this kind of, you're giving yourself plausible deniability, right?
That's exactly the best way to put it.
Now, in your life after that moment, did you continue to have paranormal experiences, or was it just that aspect that drove your determination as an adult to dig deeper?
Well, definitely it was my experience, as a child that led me down this path. I did live in another residence along the way at one point that did have some activity, but without a doubt, growing up in that home is what set me off on this journey. There's no question about that, because, it just stuck with me. I mean, it's like when you're a child and you realize that there's this unexplainable realm that you were told isn't real. It's just folklore. It's all Halloween. When it happens to you and you see it and you're affected by it, literally scratched by it. And when you see your parents actually admitting that, okay, we don't know what this is, but we understand that it is happening. Things like this do happen. It changes your whole perspective of life, because at that point you realize, again, there's this entire realm around you. You have no control over it. Nobody truly has any answers for what these things are, and you never know when it can affect you again. And to me, that was life-changing.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your continued experiences? Because you said you moved into another haunted location.
Yeah, absolutely. I moved into a house in Saginaw, Michigan, and, it didn't take long before we started having a lot of pretty strange activity in the house. Seemed like something pretty angry was in the home. At this point, I had already started to do some amateur investigating, the best I could at the time within my means. And we would set up a lot of cassette recorders. Yeah, you like that? Cassette recorders?
I love them. I try to use them when I can, yeah.
Absolutely. And, and we would catch some pretty interesting disembodied voices. Again, in that house, a lot of door slammings, just things of that nature, and it was pretty intriguing to me. We did a lot of history on the house. It was an old farmhouse, which is, pretty interesting. Saginaw used to be a pretty big farm community, lumber lumber era town. And we don't really know exactly if anybody died. We couldn't find that out, but there was definitely a very aggressive male spirit in that house.
The nature of that haunting, was it another murder? Was it a mystery as to who or what is there and why?
Yeah, absolutely. We never could figure out any history on the house that would, specifically connect those dots, just other than the fact that the house was about 143 years old at that time. And that was about maybe about 18 years ago. So never could actually get a name. We tried several times to get a name for this entity. We couldn't get it, but we would get a lot of expletives coming from it. So it definitely was not a fan of us trying to communicate with it.
Steve Shippy, our guest today, host of A Haunting in the Heartland. He's a filmmaker, a paranormal expert. He's produced and directed 10 feature-length documentaries, including A Haunting on Hamilton Street and A Haunting on Dice Road. He's also an independent rapper, better known by his stage name Prozac. The new show starts up on February 21st on the Travel Channel, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. Check your local listings and times for your area. Set your DVRs and make sure that you check out the brand new program. And remember, folks, when you like shows like this and you DVR them, Haunting in the Heartland, watch them within the first 3 days so that it counts towards the ratings, because it's the ratings that'll keep shows like this continuing. And, if you're like me, you like to binge watch all the shows after they air. That does your favorite shows no good. So if you can't watch it live, which is always better for TV shows, watch it within the first 2 to 3 days of airing on your DVR so that it counts towards the ratings. Stay tuned. We've got more coming your way right here on Darkness Radio.
Do you experience stress or have anxiety, or even like me, have chronic pain or have trouble sleeping at least once a week? Well, you're not alone. Many of us do. Personally, I've got chronic pain and I don't sleep very well. As a matter of fact, I've got a real bad chronic pain. I've documented it personally here on the show many, many times. I've got 13 herniated discs going all the way from my C2 in my neck all the way down to my L5S1 in my lower back. 13, count them, 13 herniated discs. I don't sleep very well. As a matter of fact, I'm lucky if I get 4 to 6 hours of sleep a night, of continuous sleep. So I need help. I need help with pain management, and I just need help with sleep. Both of those issues are huge for me. So I'm searching for anything that's going to help me. So I discovered Feels. What is Feels? Well, Feels is premium CBD delivered directly to your doorstep. What does Feels do? Feels naturally helps you reduce stress, anxiety, pain, and sleeplessness. I'll tell you how Feels helped me, and it's helped immensely. Feels has taken that chronic pain, that constant irritating, that banging, that grinding, it just grinds you to a halt, that chronic pain, and it eases it almost immediately. Feels also helps that irritation, that there's only one way to describe chronic pain, and it's that lack of mobility. Not only do you have inflammation and what feels like stiffness, it takes that stiffness away, and it also takes that pain away. It's a combination of factors that Feels helps with. It also, like I said, it reduces anxiety. There's anxiety that comes with chronic pain. There's an anxiousness to it. It's a tightness that comes with chronic pain, and that eases that tightness that comes with it. It's very easy to take, folks. It comes with a dropper that's real easy to take, and Feels makes it real easy with the instructions that come with it. It tells you exactly how much you need to take in order to help with that chronic pain. You just place a few drops of Feels under your tongue, and you feel the difference within minutes. And I tell you, once you start to feel that pain wash away, once you start to feel that anxiety wash away, it's such a relief. And I tell you, I myself, the first time I took Feels, I couldn't believe it. I started to feel that pain start to wash away. And it's weird. The first time you feel that pain, start to go away, you're so used to living in pain that I told somebody once, you know what? I'll know I'm dead. I know it's kind of morbid. I'll know I'm dead the time I don't feel pain when I move or when I step or when I go to get up or even when I'm breathing and I don't feel my joints hurt. And I went and I used feels and I was moving around and I wasn't hurting. And I thought, am I still alive? It was kind of weird, but it was great. It felt great to be able to take that dropper of feels and put it under my tongue and just start to feel after a few minutes that subsiding of that pain and just start to feel human again. The great thing about feels is there's real human support there if you're new to CBD. And if you are new to CBD, Feels offers a free CBD hotline and text message support to help guide your personal experience. You can start to feel better naturally. Feels works naturally to help you feel better. There's no high, no hangover, or addiction with any of Feels. It's all natural. With your membership, you join the Feels community to get Feels delivered directly to your door every month. You'll save money on every order, and you can pause or cancel at any time. That's what's great about Feels, is you can put it down or pick it back up whenever you want. Feels has me feeling my best every day, and it can help you too. Become a member today by going to feels.com/darkness, and you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. I encourage you to do it today, especially if you're in chronic pain like I am, or you've got anxiety or stress, even if you've got sleeplessness, if it has to do with chronic pain, or even if it has to do with stress. Go ahead and try it right now. Go to feels.com/darkness and get 50% off your first order with free shipping. Try it right now, and I'll tell you, you'll start to see right away, within minutes, that pain, that stress, that anxiety, that sleeplessness start to wash away. Go right now to feels.com/darkness and you'll get 50% off your first order with free shipping. That's F as in Frank, EALS as in Sam.com/darkness to become a member and get 50% off right now. Once again, that's feels.com/darkness. Hey guys, it's Timmy here from Beyond the Darkness. I'll tell you something, working out is hard. I'm not telling you something you don't already know. It's always been hard. Even when it's easy, it's still pretty hard. And Bombas socks, well, they can't change that either. You thought I was going to tell you it can, but it can't. But Bombas socks can make it more comfortable. So if your resolution is to get fit this year, start by getting socks that can keep up every step of the way. Let me tell you why I love Bombas socks. First of all, Bombas socks are comfortable. Oh, are they comfortable? They're like little clouds around your feet. And they help keep your feet cool when it's getting hot, especially when you are working out. And I know what you're thinking. I don't think Tim works out. Well, I'll tell you something. I'm still doing my DDPY, my DDP yoga, and I do sweat. That's right, folks. I do get a little bit sweaty when I'm doing my DDPY, and I'm trying to get my back and my neck in shape so I can get up and around and walking. And if you saw me on the Chris Jericho cruise, you saw me up and around and walking for the first time in a long, long time. And I was walking around in my Bombas socks. And they kept my feet nice and cool because it was warm there on the cruise. And you know what? Now that it's frigid here in Minnesota, they're keeping my feet warm, which I love that as well. They adjust to any temperature, and they keep my feet nice and comfy. With the construction that Bombas socks has, I'm getting rid of my diabetic socks. With the arch support system that Bombas has, it's helping out with my foot, with my arches, with the toe, with the heel, everything. The construction in Bombas is keeping my diabetic feet looking perfect. In fact, when I go to the doctor, he keeps asking me, what am I doing to keep my feet looking so good? And I tell him, hey, doc, Bombas. And he agrees. So I'm replacing all my diabetic socks with Bombas socks. Now, you do a lot of different things to stay active. So Bombas makes a lot of different performance socks designed for everything from running to hiking to cycling and more. Whether you're very into sports or planning on getting very into sports, Bombas can help with performance socks and styles made specially for basketball, tennis, running, golf, and more. They're made with a lightweight poly cotton blend, which means no matter how hard you're working, your feet are going to stay cool, dry, and comfortable, never sweaty. Bombas socks provide support in places that you didn't even know you needed, like your arches. Each sock is built with a special arch support system that's supportive, but not too tight. Like a nice hug, but around your foot. A foot hug. Constantly pausing your treadmill to adjust twisted, bunched up socks is enough to make anybody get ready to quit when it comes to exercise. And that's why Bombas are designed with left-right contouring and a Y-stitched heel so that they stay perfectly in place while you're on that treadmill. If you ever notice that annoying toe seam that most socks have, well, that little ridge that sits on the top, Bombas got rid of it. It's gone. Donezo. You don't have anything to do with it anymore. It's just smooth sailing all the way across the top of your foot. And did you know also that socks are the number one most requested item in homeless shelters? And this is the number one reason that I love Bombas socks. Bombas socks were created to change that. For every pair that you buy, Bombas socks donates a pair to someone in need. And that's what we love about Bombas here on Beyond the Darkness. We love the fact that Bombas gives back to the community from which you buy these socks. If you're in San Francisco and you buy a pair of Bombas socks, they donate back to that community. If you're in the Midwest, you buy from the Midwest, they donate back to that community. Bombas is giving back to homeless shelters, and they're giving back those socks to those homeless shelters, the number one most requested item. And we love Bombas for that. So right now, go to bombas.com/darkness and get 20% off your first purchase. That's our gift to you today. That's BOM as in Mary, BAS.com/darkness for 20% off. Enjoy the comfort and the feel of Bombas. Whether you're working out, whether you've got a lot of walking to do, and just be nice to your feet. Go to bombas.com today/darkness. Bombas.com/darkness to get 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/darkness for 20% off. Bombas.com/darkness.
We've got an actual link to the Travel Channel Haunting in the Heartland page right on today's program. So you can click on that link. It'll take you in. You can learn more about our guest, more about his investigations, and more about the shows. How many episodes can we look forward to in the first season here, Steve?
There'll be 6.
6 episodes straight out of the gate. First episode will, again, air on February 21st. They'll rerun the show as well. Episode 2, February 28th. Every Friday it'll be running in. Get some great titles, I got to tell you that. The Watchmen, I Am Red Death, Descent into Madness, Face of Evil. When you are looking into cases, trying to, figure out what you want to represent in your documentaries or on this program, how do you sift through whose cases are important enough? That's been the tough part for a lot of these shows is, you get overwhelmed by how many stories are taking place. And there are some people in real need. What was your kind of course of action?
Both with this series, Haunting in the Heartland, and my Haunted Saginaw film series, the approach, and I'm sure for you much the same way, it's the level of what's happening in the house. How dangerous is the activity? And of course, number one, are there children involved? And if so, we tend to take those cases priority over any other case. So that, pretty much it's the intensity, the danger level, and our children being affected.
When there are children involved, what is I'm just curious, your kind of tact to dealing with this and still giving the family a chance to feel safe, and especially the children, until you can give them answers?
Well, definitely removing them from the home during the process. I don't particularly I try to basically limit the exposure. I don't want the kids to hear our conversations or get more spooked out by us coming in there or talking about what we've seen so far or anything of that nature. So getting them out of the house, trying to give the family a break from the home putting them up into a hotel, Airbnb, whatever the case may be, and just, trying to let them know that, hey, I understand where you're coming from. I grew up in a home that was haunted, basically building that rapport and letting them know that I'm not just here to provoke, and my goal is not just to catch audio and video and then say thank you and then walk away, that we're, truly trying to help. Because at this point in my career, doing this for as long as I have, I think to me it's more about, trying to really help these people with their situation more than just catching the evidence.
When the kids are obviously afraid of the activity that's taking place in their house, as you deal with in the first episode, is it a hard line for you to walk on what you want to reveal to them and what we should hold back? Or do you just believe that, hey, we need to face this head on? Everybody needs to know what they're really up against.
I usually leave that to the parents' discretion. I try to keep my conversations to the adults as much as possible and try to tell them things that, that I think that they could talk to their children about, to put them at ease in some sense and let them know that, we all have strength within us. We all have faith. We all have a power within us that I, in my opinion, truly believe can combat a lot of what is out there. I think, fear is very human, needless to say. And no matter how strong we think we are, we're always going to end up seeing or hearing things in the paranormal field that's going to scare us, particularly at that moment. But, building courage. And one thing I always try to tell people when I'm dealing with their cases is I always say, well, look, I'm here talking to you now. You've gone through hell. You've gone through the worst, it seems, so far, and you're still here. You didn't, you haven't fled your house. You haven't run. You're still alive and well. You've got more power than you think you do.
Does that seem to help, especially with the children, giving them that sense that they're in control?
Yeah, I really think that it does. And honestly, I really do believe that. It's not just placebo that I'm giving them at the time, because, I do feel that, kind of like anything in life, if we really stand up to it and we face it and we take it head on and we don't procrastinate and we don't, dive our head into the sand, ostrich style, no matter what, we're gonna come out better. We're gonna deal with it in a more aggressive nature and try to find a resolve.
Okay. Now, with that said, let's talk about, obviously, we don't want to give away much from the TV series because we want people to check it out and be surprised along, with everyone, but maybe even just kind of taking a look back at what you've had to deal with in your documentaries. What have been some of the most intense hauntings that you've had to deal with? Okay.
Now, as far as my documentaries go, now you're referring to the Haunted Saginaw series?
Yes.
Yeah. We had a case out on Dice Road, which is actually one that, we revisited with Haunting in the Heartland, episode 1, the premiere episode. And that case, I mean, it's like you're at a loss for words. It's one of the most intricate and amazing cases I've ever been a part of. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure how many in existence in the country or the world could rival it. One of the locations, the activity had gone on there for a year and a half, just nonstop. It involved multiple law enforcement agencies, parapsychology teams out of Duke University, Lund University out in Sweden. There was spontaneous combustion. There were fires. There was levitation. There was personal physical attacks and injuries. And I have all the police reports from these incidents, stakeouts. I mean, it's so much, honestly. I could go on for hours about this case. And I received this information. A woman had contacted me on social media, and for about a year, she was trying to arrange a meeting with me, but wouldn't tell me why and what it was regarding. So, naturally, I wasn't too keen on just meeting up with somebody I didn't know about something I don't even know what it's about. But finally, she piqued my interest enough to where I did go and meet with her, and she handed me a cardboard box full of police reports and simply said, I want you to take these. I want you to read them. and get back to me if you feel like it. And then as I'm going through these reports, you would have thought it was the work of fiction. So I literally just did, some very simple investigation, just started looking at all these names on these reports and looking them up online and contacting these retired officers and asking them, hey, does this address out on Dice Road mean anything to you? And immediately I was getting tons of responses. I think we interviewed around 45 people in all, and everyone's story was absolutely consistent. Whether they believed it was the work of witchcraft, which was involved in this story, or whether they thought it was just poltergeist, anomalous activity, no matter what their belief was that it was causing it, they all definitely said these things happened, they were never explained, and they were investigated in every sense of the word, to where law enforcement just exhausted all possibilities. And we even have the reports that finalize it to say, after X amount of hours, X amount of reports, none of these events could be explained, and they couldn't spend any more time or resource on them. And we were able to get into the house, and the current owners still have activity there, because this case originally took place in 1974 and 1975, and they are still having activity today. So to me, that's the one case that will never leave me. In fact, I still get phone calls about that case constantly.
It's one thing when you've got a nervous family or a nervous individual who thinks they're haunted. But when you start looking into the case and there's police reports regarding the strange and anomalous, and they don't have any answers, does that kind of affect you a little bit differently than any other case would?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, you got to look at the credibility and the type of people that are making these claims. It's, even looking past the family, looking past the neighbors, looking past the people in the neighborhood, all of these people that we interviewed were all law enforcement, fire department, first responders. They typically don't believe in things like this. In fact, I'd say at least about 70% of them told us in the interviews, I never believed in this type of thing. I didn't believe in this type of thing throughout the entire investigation until the point where I saw, and then they would share the story. They did everything that could be done in this house. I mean, in fact, it hit the front page of the Saginaw paper, and the article said "haunted by electronics?" ? Because they actually believed at one point somebody had broken into the house and rigged the home with electronics to try to account for this. So they ripped up the plaster, nothing. The house would start to shake, the foundation cracked. They even brought seismograph material out there. And then we're talking about the police did these things. Thought maybe there was an old salt mine, something to explain it. Of course, no explanation. And then finally, the officers started to see things levitate right in front of them. In fact, there's one report where two officers had stated that they were sitting on the couch talking to the family, and the couch actually lifted up about a foot and then just dropped. Yes. Yeah, it's a crazy story. It just truly is. In fact, another little interesting tidbit about the case, at the time, the current owner of the Detroit Tigers actually funded out of his own pocket for this parapsychology team to come out and do research on it. Turns out he was very fascinated with the occult. In fact, a book recently came out, I believe about 6 months ago. I have it on my shelf here behind me, about John Fetzer and his obsession with the occult. And it's a very little known fact. In fact, I don't even know that anybody knows that he actually was involved in that. And we have all the police reports here that, that state that. And of course, the family, the kids that were living in the home at the time were very excited when John Fetzer would call because, they were huge Tiger fans. And they said that was one of the only cool things that ever came out of this nightmare for them.
What would you say, in all the years that you've investigated and filmed this type of activity, what would you say is one of the most frightening things you've ever seen? And I mean, if we put away the false bravado of us being men and I'm never afraid, there's always moments that we feel like, holy shoot, what am I into here?
So, as interesting as this is, I've definitely seen, tangible things. I've seen apparitions that were very frightening. But, from my perspective, I think the scariest thing that I've ever dealt with is when you work on a inhuman or a demonic case, it's not even what you see or what you hear, but it's when you're in those type of those cases, the way that it makes you feel, the effect that it has on you when you watch it turn people against each other around you, when you start to have some very bizarre coincidences that to me are not coincidences. I think that if you ever really encounter evil, you know, we know that demonic cases are few and far between, but if you ever actually encounter one, I think that's by far the scariest thing that you can be involved with, because you realize that there truly is a hierarchy out there, and there's beings out there that actually far exceed anything that a human spirit can do. And I guess when you get really close to true evil, I think that's by far the scariest thing that you can get involved with.
You and I, you know, I'm of the same mind. I don't believe there's a demon in every cabinet, right? You know, I think they're very few and far between. Most of it's misunderstood activity. But when you get into something where you realize, oh boy, this is just a level above my pay grade, what do you do? Who do you reach out to for help?
Definitely agree with that. In fact, we're dealing with a case right now for my 11th film, which is actually a continuation of the 10th, where it's pretty interesting. The case that we were dealing with, we thought we really understood what was happening based on the experiences in the home, what we were catching, the history, but somehow, some way it changed. You know, the family got back with us and said, listen, it hasn't gone away. It's gotten much worse, scratching, foul smells, growls. The crucifixes in their home are missing or broken. They're going on and on with these updated situations that they're experiencing, and even catching some of it on video, because I kept telling them, if and when possible, just hit record on your cell phone, try to capture any of these things. And in fact, they did. And so, you know, because it bears all these hallmarks and we're now experiencing that ourselves, we reached out to Michael Salerno, who's a really reputable demonologist out in Connecticut. I used to work with Father Andrew Calder. And he's a great friend of our show. He's sorely missed. Yeah, he was a great guy. He was in my first two documentaries, and yeah, it was very sad when he passed. He was just an excellent guy. He truly was. And anytime I feel that we are dealing with something like that, I definitely do not think that I can handle that on my own, and I reach out to, you know, the appropriate people. Getting the right help, you know, I mean, you and I seem like we're coming at it from a Christian perspective. Have you had to reach out to other religions or other faith bases, shamans, anything like that, to try to take you to that next level for understanding how the haunting goes? Yes, absolutely. Our second documentary, Haunting on Hamilton Street 2, it was an old funeral home that was actually built on an ancient Indian burial ground. When the road commission was widening the street out in front of the building, they unearthed the remains of Native Americans. And we really believe that a lot of the activity that was happening in this old building was a result of that disturbance and the way that it was handled. And we actually brought in a gentleman, Justin Levitt, who was part of that bloodline and tribe, to come in and do some healing and some work. And great guy, lifelong friend of mine ever since. And yeah, we always try to bring in, you know, the right person for the right situation. So I definitely don't think it has to always span one religion, so to speak. I think it has to come from the heart of the situation with love and passion. What do you find in that? I mean, is it pretty different and radically unique approaches, or do you find that really through it all, we're all kind of approaching it the same way? We're all dealing with the same type of coping mechanisms when it comes to, you know, whatever religion, whatever belief system you are in kind of helping these spirits or removing them? You know, I would have to say I feel that basically what you just said is kind of my theory. Despite the different religions and the different rules, so to speak, of the different religions, I think that it has to come from the heart. There has to be love and forgiveness and passion and faith in what we're doing. And it has to be true in the sense of if you're trying to help something cross over or get it to leave the house, I really believe that it's all about the love and the faith that's within you. I think everybody has to stand tough together and really want this change. As far as the inhuman stuff, though, I will say, I have been present during exorcisms, minor rite, and the real deal. And I think in those cases, really and truly, it's not just about love and understanding. It's about going through the actual process and forcing something out. So I wish I had all the answers. I definitely don't. I don't think anybody ever will. But I do think that there is a hierarchy in the demon realm, the demonic realm, that has to be dealt with in the old script the way that it currently does today.
Well, yeah, I understand that completely. You were there to witness this on many occasions. When a spirit was or a demon was ejected from these situations, would you ever physically witness some type of manifestation or something leave?
One time I did. One time I did see something that, to me, the best way to describe it is it almost seemed, it didn't look like what I thought it would. It was more of a kind of a silver metallic-y type of a wavy apparition. Not necessarily any form to it. Definitely did not look human, but it was almost more like kind of a shimmering blob, if you will, that just kind of moved away from the person backwards and kind of dissipated, which kind of surprised me because I certainly did not think it would be of that color. I guess I just expected something more malevolent looking, darker, but that is what I did witness.
I mean, that's got to change you too, and your perspective on what's going on when you can see that, wow, this isn't just somebody with a mental breakdown. There is truly an outside influence affecting them.
Yeah, 100%. And in the intelligence that these things have, to me, is so intriguing. Again, the case I'm dealing with right now, what really blows my mind is the homeowner will contact me and tell me, okay, this just happened to me, or this happened to us last night. And then I'll go back and I'll relay this message to the demonologist that's working on the case. And it seems that any time that the demonologist and I speak, the activity in the house ends up getting worse. And it's consistent. I'll hear from both of them almost exactly at the same time. Or if I speak to one of them, the activity will get worse, and then the other one will call me. And it's just very odd. Plus, a lot of strange coincidences will start to happen to you when you're working on cases like this. And after a while, you have to understand that they're not coincidences. And to me, I think kind of going back to the fact that I believe that's kind of the scariest part is, how much power do these things have? How much control do they have? And that's just truly frightening.
Right. Well, that's what kind of unnerves me is the fact that, if they are that strong, they're that powerful out there, what can we really do to protect ourselves? I mean, how do we know we're not just puppets all the time? That's one of those thoughts that in this field keeps my mind going late into the night and keeps me from resting.
Yeah, that's the infinite wormhole right there. I completely agree. I try not to go too far down that wormhole because I think that that's kind of the descent into madness, if you will. It's like trying to understand all there is to understand about space and gravity and time. It's natural for us to want to make sense of what we don't understand, and we can spin our wheels forever. But I just try to I try to stay focused on what I feel like I can control and the ways that I can help. And I try not to dig too deep into that realm. As I'm sure you can think about that forever, but it always just takes you right back down the wormhole.
You've got 6 episodes in your first season. Haunting in the Heartland on Travel Channel starts airing on February 21st, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You've got these 6. What can you tell us? I mean, are each one radically different in the type of activity that takes place?
Actually, they are. They definitely are. One of the cases that we have in Iowa was an inhuman case where we did have to bring in a demonologist. A young couple with children were going through oppression stages, and unfortunately, I believe it was getting pretty close to the actual possession stage. And luckily, we were able to get in there and intervene in time. We have
spoiler alert, Steve. Spoiler alert.
That's right. Yeah, I better not go much further than that. But yeah, the cases really are drastically different. We have residual activity. We have poltergeist activity, inhuman. But the one thing that I believe this series really focuses on, and I'm very glad to be a part of that, is that we specifically looked for entire communities that were affected by activity, not just limited to one house or one location within the house. These were communities that were affected in many different ways, and we were going to great lengths to try to find out, what is causing this, what is the bigger picture, what is the history, and how can we try to bring some knowledge and understanding and even resolve in some cases to these communities and to these cases specifically.
Let me ask you, since you dealt with poltergeist activity, I kind of vacillate on this topic, and especially because I've been dealing with a lot more of it in some of the cases we've covered on the Holzer Files. But what do you, not going off the book writings or the movie versions, but what do you attribute poltergeist activity to really be?
I'm really glad you asked that question, because I am fascinated with this specific type of activity. I've read pretty much everything there is to possibly read on what all the different variations or belief systems of what a poltergeist necessarily is. The one thing that really blows me away, I was able to speak with a gentleman that Jerry Sulfin, who very knowledgeable about poltergeist cases. In fact, his mentor, William Roll, literally wrote the book on poltergeist activity. And going back to the Dice Road case that I worked on, they attributed in their knowledge and their experience that this was a true poltergeist haunting that came from a poltergeist agent, which was the youngest son in the family. Now, what blows my mind is, these voices were very specific. They were coming out of walls. They were coming out of electronics, threatening to kill the family. And I kind of wonder if a poltergeist is supposed to be a manifestation that comes from a human through some type of traumatic stress or teenage adolescence, angst, all of these things, how can it actually have a mind of its own to be able to speak, to be able to have foresight on things? I can understand an anomalous force, a burst of energy, knocking stuff off the table, cracking sounds, those type of things. But how can it actually speak? And where do we have the limits on what a poltergeist is or isn't? So I think that term is thrown around. It seems like lately the term poltergeist is being used quite a bit, which is interesting because it seemed like that was something that more in the 60s and 70s was being thrown around quite a bit, but it seems to be making quite a comeback. But I don't really know where the definitive lines are in a poltergeist haunting. Now, my personal opinion, I believe that anomalous force and energy, that a house that has no history, nothing to really point to what is causing the haunting, and if that person is always present when the activity happens, I believe that's more of a poltergeist nature. In my opinion, it's just a power that we possess that we don't understand when we're going through high stress periods, things of that nature. That's what I would consider a poltergeist haunting.
That's where I'm really starting to settle on that. And I don't know that it's always a person, the person may be a catalyst or the spark that sets the fire. I don't know that it's necessarily paranormal in the aspect that we're thinking of ghosts or demonic presence, ethereals, eternals, any of that. The earth is constantly changing and shifting, and tectonic plates are moving, and you're creating geomagnetic principles. And I often wonder if some of these are just little like when, you agitate a kernel of corn and it finally blows and it becomes popcorn. That doesn't make it evil. It doesn't make it wicked. It just transforms the energy. So these emissions from either people and their stress levels or mental anxiety issues or the stress and pressure of the planet is firing off these little synapses of energy that are creating activity that I don't necessarily believe has anything to do with ghosts.
Absolutely. That's a great theory. I mean, that's highly possible.
Now, it could be that a haunting creates stress, which creates these pockets of bursts of energy because of our anxiety and stress levels. Henceforth, we are the creator of the poltergeist-like activity. But I think we're in the chicken or the egg first situation, right?
Yeah, it's like a perfect storm, and that's the thing. That's why it's so difficult when you ask me to try to label what a poltergeist is. It's very fascinating, though. At the same time, I think it's one of the most one of the least known or explainable types of hauntings out there because it's so hard to really classify what is a poltergeist haunting.
Now, that's one style. How do you discern a true intelligent haunting? Because this is something, again, the delineation line for me is very blurred. It's easy if you're asking a question, Steve, are you there? Yes. Okay. That's an obvious intelligent and interactive haunting. But when you start hearing footsteps, a lot of times we'll just describe that to be a residual haunting, that loop or play. But how do you start to discern? No, maybe that's not. Maybe that's not just a replay. Maybe that's legitimately something moving around, whether it's dead in its time era or, dead here and still moving around us. How do you treat those type of hauntings yourself?
Well, I guess like you just said, it is hard to discern that. I mean, when you hear something as simple as just footsteps in a home, I can't call that residual right off the bat. There's no way to me that you can determine, well, that's residual because it didn't, start speaking to me. But I guess it depends on the motive, for lack of a better word, of the footsteps. If you're in a certain room of the house and you hear these footsteps come down the stairs and come toward you, or in the same room with you, walking away from you as if it's trying to get away from you, I think at that point you start to wonder, okay, is there some intelligence, behind what I'm hearing right now? And then from that point, you want to take it a step further to basically go in the direction of that sound that you heard and then continue multiple methods of communication to try to get more data or information to make that determination. But I do agree that if somebody's experiencing just footsteps, so to speak, or doors opening and closing, I definitely do not think that you can just label that as a residual haunting because nothing else is transpiring.
But what is, you're hearing the footsteps. Is it truly something intelligent that's dead, or could we be hearing ourselves, the patterns that we make on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point as well, because I mean, if the former occupants of a house or a building, if their daily activities can be recorded in that sense and then replay later as residual energy or activity, why couldn't the living do the exact same thing? Because energy is energy. So energy is energy. So that's a very fascinating point. That's an excellent point to bring up.
Yeah, I'm so baffled by many of these different aspects, and I'm hoping to, I don't know, how do we even begin to, you can theorize like we're doing all day long, but how do we, and do you think we're close to a point where we're going to be able to start to prove these different aspects one way or another, or are we going to kind of remain as we always have for the last 200 years of paranormal investigating, kind of always just going down some new wormhole? I
think my answer to that would be definitely at this point, where we are today, I believe there's more paranormal investigation taking place than ever before. And of course, as technology has become so readily available, I mean, my God, look at the capabilities of an iPhone. Imagine a paranormal investigator having that 25 years ago. So there's an extraordinary amount of people out there filming and taking pictures, even just people that aren't investigating but live in a haunted location that are trying to capture these things. And I think as we get more and more data over the years, more answers or more patterns are going to emerge for us to have better theories. But definitely, I would say that no matter how far this advances, we're never going to have the answers. You know, there's no way that we're going to have definitive answers to all these different classifications of hauntings and what is happening, unfortunately, until we're on the other side ourselves.
With your series in the first 6 episodes and looking into different aspects, different styles of hauntings that are taking place, and of course interjecting different methodologies on how to deal with it, do you ever come across a case that just leaves you scratching your head like, I don't know where we go from here?
Yeah, I will definitely say that has happened. I mean, when you dig into a case with everything that you have, all of your resources, you do your diligence, research, history, interview, canvass the town, investigate with every piece of gear that you have, and then in some cases bringing in whether it be clergy or a psychic medium. When you get to the point where you've exhausted all possibilities and you can't make sense of why this is even happening in the first place, and you've done everything you can to try to get it to stop or leave, and it continues, I guess at that point, it's like you said, you know, you're basically scratching your head and you have to kind of say, okay, I don't know what else we can do, but we're always here for you. You know, you can always call us. We're always going to be here for you in some sense. But there does come a point sometimes where there's really nothing you can do for them, sadly.
The series starts again February 21st, Friday, February 21st on the Travel Channel. 6 brand new episodes. You'll be able to watch them, DVR them. Haunting in the Heartland, folks. Go set your DVR right now so that you don't forget. Watch those episodes within the first 3 days. If you had to give some advice to people that are dealing with a haunting right now that they feel terrified by, that they feel like they're losing who they are because of it, what are some of the steps you would give them right now to try to get control back?
You know, I would say first and foremost, do not isolate yourself or yourselves. Communicate with each other, support one another in the family. Don't be afraid to hold back. Acknowledge that what's happening is what's happening. I think that's first and foremost. Stay in communication with people. Seek the people around you that offer you love and support. Talk to your extended family. Stay in communication with people, and don't let it just continue without doing anything. You know, call upon reputable paranormal experts, investigators in your area. If you're a church-going person, speak to your pastor, your priest, whoever. The point is no isolation, and bring people into your home and try to combat this thing with love and understanding, and whatever it takes to not just sit there and fester in that fear. Because I really believe in a lot of cases, whether it be inhuman or not, if something does have egregious motives, if it is mean, if it's nasty, that's just empowering it. It's giving that thing control. So I think that staying in communication with people is key to me.
I love it. I wish you a lot of success with the show, Steve. And if you'd like to join us, maybe we can meet up in another month or two after your show has aired, and we can talk a little bit more in depth about the specific cases that you worked on. Would you be willing to do that for us?
Absolutely. I would love to.
Steve Shippy, he is the lead investigator, brand new show, Haunting in the Heartland. How can they find more information about you and your documentaries as well?
Sure. For anybody out there that has Amazon Prime, you can stream all of our films for free. Just simply go on Prime Video and search Steve Shippy or Haunted Saginaw. All 10 films will come up there. And, of course, on Facebook, just search Haunted Saginaw. It's the best way to find us.
All right, fantastic. That's it for this week, kids. We are done. Another edition of the Best in Paranormal Talk Radio is over. Remember, keep checking and checking darknessradio.com for any updates, all the cool information that you need to know about the show. We'll be back again next weekend with brand new episodes of the Best in Paranormal Talk Radio. And don't forget our True Crime Tuesday show every Tuesday. What, you're not subscribing already? What the hell's wrong with you people? How do you do it? Okay, that's a better question. Just go to darknessradio.com, click on the True Crime Tuesday banner. It'll show you how you can subscribe. Better yet, why don't you just go to the Google Play Store or go directly to your iTunes Store and get the free Darkness Radio app. That'll give you access to our shows, ways to listen, and keep up with what Tim and Dave are up to in the world of the supernatural. For Tim Dennis, I'm Dave Schrader. Watch A Haunting in the Heartland. That airs this Friday, the 21st of February here on the Travel Channel, 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. Set your DVRs. Don't miss it. Special thanks to our guest, Steve Shippy, right here on Darkness Radio.